Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I'm joined by actress Carey Cox, who portrays Rose Blaine on The Handmaid's Tale. Introduced in season 5, Rose is an unusual character in Gilead due to her congenital hip dysplasia, which requires the use of a cane. This mirrors Carey's own real-life experience living with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. As a disabled actor and advocate, Carey brings authenticity and nuance to her roles, challenging outdated perceptions of disability in the entertainment industry. We chat about her career path, her work on The Handmaid's Tale, and so much more. I had a really great time chatting with Carey, and I think you're going to love the interview. Hi, Carey. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, I can. How are you
All right.
doing?
Doing well. Wonderful. So glad we don't have any technical.
Good.
Yeah, let's jump right in, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I love it.
So, Carey, you grew up in El Paso, is that right?
I did.
So you and I are both
Yeah, yeah.
Texans, but about as far apart geographically as you can be, and both claim that. I grew up
Yes.
almost Texarkana. So like the
Gotcha, gotcha. Well,
uh,
gotcha. I love Austin. I mean, of course, how could you not? But it's been a while since I've been there.
can you talk a little bit about getting into acting, where you fell in love with it, how did you get into musical theater, and then where did you think acting was going? What did you think a career in acting looked like when you
Oh,
were
interesting.
first leaving Texas?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it started with Kids and Company, which was I don't know if it still exists, but it was a little El Paso kids theater group that was very sweet, and I did that when I was maybe 7 years old. Did that a little bit, and it was just something to do. And I was a really shy little kid, so it was something to kind of get me out of my shell. And loved it immediately. And then did all the school plays, all that kind of thing. Did speech and debate in high school, and uh, El Paso had, again, I hope that they still have this wonderful summer theater program where all of the schools would get together and put on a musical. So I did that for a couple of years, and that kind of sealed the deal. I didn't really have any examples of what acting would look like as a profession, aside from the people I would see on TV or movies. And I'd never been to New York or seen a Broadway show. I didn't see my first Broadway show until I was 22, 23, something like that. Um, so I always felt like sometimes in school I would meet these people who had grown up in New York and who had met actors or trained with fancy actors or seen a bunch of Broadway shows. I always felt kind of naive and like I had so much to learn. And now having been in New York, it was just like off to the races once I got here. And we've seen everything that we could up until recently with being pregnant, and that kind of put a pause on everything. But I just really had supportive family who knew that I really liked to do it. So even though there wasn't an example, they really cheered me on to go to undergrad for musical theater and then later to grad school for acting, just kind of hoping that it would work out, or really just hoping that I would be happy. That was kind of the always the way that we talked about it, was you've got to do what makes you happy, no matter what that means, no matter what that looks like. So I was really lucky in that way. And then in undergrad and grad school, that's when I finally got to meet professional actors and see what that looked like. And I saw that that could look like so many
Hmm.
different things. And I think a lot of people have, if they're not in the world, kind of a different idea of what a working actor looks like, what our days look like, the fact that you can be an actor and do other work. A lot of times you have to do other work as an actor, and that we're not paid like huge amounts of money. We don't all live in LA. We don't all live in Hollywood. That there are working actors all over the country who live everywhere. Uh, yeah, it's a job. It's a regular job like anything else.
Uh, can you talk a little bit about uh, not just getting to see Broadway, but getting to understand, getting to
Yeah.
into stage theater? and then a little bit about what the transition was like into television, which is such a weird close-up little bits of your performance, and you don't know what editing might look like. It's so wildly different, I think, than
Yeah.
live theater. Can you talk a little bit about
Hmm.
what that's like as an actor for you? Are they
For
both
sure.
enjoyable, different,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, they're different, but there's a core that's the same. The acting technique, the character work, all of that, at least for me, is the same. Um, playing your objective and defining your circumstances and looking at text and that kind of thing. That's all the same with everything. But I really did think I was going to be a theater actor. What I loved the most once I started working professionally was regional theater. I got the chance in grad school. My school was connected to a professional theater playmakers repertory company in Chapel Hill, in North Carolina. And the coolest thing about that is they had a set company, which is really rare these days, to have a company of actors who, for every show that's planned, they would first go to the company and see if they could cast the shows directly from the company of actors. And then if they couldn't, then they would go to New York and they would cast and bring people in. And there are just a few theaters that still work like that. But it means you have this family of people who you always get to see, which is the thing that I think is the saddest thing about being an actor is that you get really close to the people that you work with for a short period of time and you make this awesome thing together and then you have to say goodbye and it's hard to keep in touch and hard to support each other. It's so worth it if you can, but it's difficult. But at the same time, you meet a ton of different people. Like we collect all these amazing people. It's just there are only so many hours in the day to keep up with everybody. But from there, I moved to New York, um, wanting to do more regional theater, wanting to be that person who lived in New York, who then theaters would bring in to their theaters across the
Mhm.
country. And I got to do that a few times. And I loved that because it's like summer camp. You go and you live somewhere else for a little while and you get to know these different places and kind of become a part of the community because you're there for a few months. And then you go back home and I loved that. But at the same time as I was starting to do that, I was also on a physical journey of realizing that I had a disability. I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome in my early 20s, and it's a joint condition, a connective tissue disorder that causes joint problems, and it started affecting the way that I walk when I moved to New York. Like my first couple months in New York is when it really started affecting me so that I started walking kind of with a limp. And I started using a cane to get to auditions. And I would leave the cane in the lobby and then go into the room and do my audition and just hope that no one would notice anything. But people started commenting on it. And there were a few jobs where like I would go in and do the audition and then I'd maybe run into one of the casting people or the director in the hallway or in the elevator and then they would ask me more questions about it and then I in the conversation of oh yeah but I walk differently yada yada in my head I'm going oh I think I just lost the part if I was up for the part I think that I'm not anymore that kind of thing and who knows if that was exactly
Right, but
true
it's
but
so
that was
hard to
how I
stay out of
was
your head
perceiving it.
anyway in interview and auditions. That yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was actually a friend of mine who's adjacent to the disability community because of her brother who kind of had a come to Jesus moment with me. She was like, you're a disabled actor. You need to start thinking of yourself that way. And the industry does kind of define people in these ways. You know, there are certain niches and um, theoretically any actor should be able to play any part, but you are categorized by who you are, where you come from, how you move, how you look. And I didn't really realize that there was this community of disabled actors who had a specific spot in the industry. And that if I didn't, if I kept trying to hide my disability, then I would be entering these spaces where they weren't looking for me. But if I shifted a little bit and I embraced that part of myself, then suddenly there would be this part of the industry who was looking to cast disabled roles authentically and that they would be looking for me, which was kind of amazing. And it was kind of ignorant on my part to have kind of ignored this community for so long and not realized that it existed. And I kind of felt bad when I realized and started researching it, because I realized there were so many people who had been trying to make strides for decades to be included in the industry and to authentically play disabled characters. Lots of people who were really trained and legitimate actors. And pretty much as soon as I started realizing this, I saw the audition for the understudy role for the Glass Menagerie. I saw that they were having a principal audition, so you could just go and attend. So I showed up, and for the first time in a few months since my walking had started changing, I was met with this, oh, good, oh, we've been looking for you kind of thing from the people across the table, which I hadn't felt for a long time. That led to another audition and then another audition. And then I got that role, which was amazing and such a pinch me kind of thing. And it was 6 months, I believe, into moving to New York, all of a sudden in this awesome community and getting to meet such cool people, and getting to sit back and watch Sally Field and Joe Mantello and Madison Ferris, who played the principal role of the role that I understudied, watching them work and seeing how that worked. It was really cool. And then it ended, and I went back to regional theater for a while, and I still didn't have an agent. So I still didn't really know how to get roles aside from just getting them on my own or submitting emails. And I was meeting with agents, but not really able to land something. So it's kind of a long story, and I can definitely ramble when I talk. But I found out then that there was a little program specifically for disabled actors that Queen's Theater was doing, that was trying to bridge the gap between training and then professional work for disabled actors. So I went and I did that, and I met some wonderful people who said, you need to look up Gail Williamson with KMR, because it turns out that she was representing like 95% of all disabled actors in the industry, which was both a wonderful thing, and also there were pros and cons to it.
Right.
As it is with any identity, when you group a lot of people together, it's great because people knew where to find us, but also then you get kind of pigeonholed and aren't integrated into the rest of the acting community. But for me, it was amazing then, because all of a sudden I was thrown into this world where I was getting film and TV auditions, which I really hadn't ever thought that I would do. I was kind of thinking, oh, it's okay if I continue on this road forever, because I love theater, and theater is much more, you can walk into an audition and show up and just say, I'm here by myself. I represent myself. And if you're right for the part, then they'll continue on with you. But film and TV, it felt like there was no way to get into it unless you had the right people who could open that
Someone
door
could help.
for you. Mm-hmm, for sure. So that was how that started. And I think the biggest difference, I mean, there are a few differences, but the main one is that you don't rehearse. You have a blocking rehearsal, and then you might do a little bit of rehearsal right before you shoot your scene with film and TV. But so much of it is you just have to commit to your choice. You have to come in knowing what you want to do. You have to be there with your partner. And a lot of times things move so fast that the first choice you make, the first take, is going to be the one that they use. And if they like it, they'll move on. And you're going, wait, can I try it again? And they don't have time. So you've got to come in and make sure that your first shot at something is what you could be comfortable seeing on the show. Whereas with theater, you can like ease into it, and you can do the initial table reading, kind of not making any choices, and take your time in such this way. And
I
yeah.
can't imagine being on a show like Handmaid's Tale with such heavy material. I was just thinking that this is kind of long-winded and rambly. Sorry.
No, I mean, I'm the queen of long-winded and rambly, as I just demonstrated.
I think of acting as both a job of a bit hiding and revealing that you kind of want to disappear into a
Mhm.
role, but you're also showing a little something vulnerable about the humans. Things sneak through, and that's how the magic works.
Yeah.
Uh, and I can also imagine the additional vulnerability of having an onset disability that you maybe didn't grow up with or aren't used to, or this is new for you as an adult. Uh,
Hmm.
and then was it difficult or revealing? Do you feel like your acting changed by adding that true piece of yourself to what you were bringing
Oh, interesting.
to acting?
Well, yeah. Well, something that there's so many interesting little intricacies in the disabled actor world that a lot of us talk about and we pick up on. But if you're outside of that world, you might never know or realize or talk about it. And one of the things that we talk about is the way that casting and the way that the general public views different kinds of disabilities, um, and sometimes the lack of nuance in how genuine disability is represented. I mean, disabled people make up a quarter of the population, and there are even more people who are in this kind of gray area of disability, where because we all have human bodies that are all going to malfunction at some point, who maybe have something that they need access needs for, some
Mhm.
needs that need to be met, and but it's not something where they need to assume an identity to get those needs met. They just need to find a way to speak about them to get them met. So they're more in the gray area. But there are differences in how casting and directors and the public see people with amputations versus how they see the deaf community versus how they see wheelchair users versus cane users. And because it's not really talked about outside of these circles, a lot of times it's kind of like the conversations I would have with directors after an audition where I explained my disability and then I'm kind of jumping to conclusions based on, I don't know, maybe the look on their face or something. But we see these trends, and my husband and I both are ambulatory wheelchair users, so we use wheelchairs sometimes when it suits us, but we both can also walk. It's just difficult to walk, or we're crappy at it, and so we have another option that we'll use. But a lot of times for auditions or for acting work, we will use a wheelchair because we tend to notice this trend, and we question ourselves all the time if this is actually going on or not. But where you don't see a lot of people who walk differently on TV because that's kind of maybe confusing. It's like, is that, did that person injure themselves? What is that? You just don't, if you're not in this world, then you don't know what that could be. Whereas if we're in the world, we see that and we go, oh, that person might have cerebral palsy or that person might have MS. Like we know the little details that can
But it
give
probably
something
happened long
away.
ago. It isn't germane to this scene. That person, yeah. No, I can
Yeah,
see that
yeah,
weirdly.
yeah. But oftentimes using somebody in a wheelchair, that will be like the quickest shortcut to this
Right.
is a disabled person. We all know this. We know what a wheelchair is. Um, it's
Yeah.
not confusing in a way. So for Handmaids to write the character as someone who walked with a limp felt very unusual, and particularly to write a female character who walks with a limp and who is also, in a way, a love interest, that I was really surprised to get that breakdown because that's how the character was written from the beginning. And you just don't see that very often. Often when you see disabled character, it'll be a kind of stereotypical idea of disability and not something that's maybe more nuanced or slightly confusing to people. And there's also something I think that people might perceive as unattractive about somebody limping or hobbling, somebody with a gait difference versus a lot of times when we see a wheelchair written into a show, it's like, and they effortlessly glided into the room. Like the
Right.
language around it in the stage directions will be, they came in their super cool, tricked out wheelchair, not like, and then they slowly limped into the room. Those
Right.
can have two different meanings. So it was very freeing just to kind of be myself and get to move the way that I move. And for the people not to, the people writing it and directing it, to not feel the need to hide it in any way or even over explain it. I love that there's no real scene where Rose has a monologue about what
Right.
happened to her and why she is the way she is. And there's no kind of inspiring monologue that happens, you
Well,
know?
and just the world of the show, uh, Rose as a character, and is it congenital hip dysplasia in the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
it 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 raises so many questions in Gilead as to
Yeah.
power and privilege, and I think there have been a few scary fascist shows in the last few years that I think Man in the High Castle's dealt with
Yeah.
a slightly similar. Uh, how do these societies handle these things badly? It turns out,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and so it was just remarkable to me that the writers wanted to put that on there to keep that in the forefront for the audience. That when you see Rose on screen, part of your brain is thinking these things. Uh, how is she in Gilead, in any level of
Hmm.
proxy to power, and not in deep danger for her? And the reality is that she is still in danger.
Yeah,
Everyone
exactly. And
everyone in Gilead is. Uh,
yes, and what I love about the writers of the show is that they trust the audience so much. There's not a lot of hitting things on the head for the audience. They know that the audience pays attention and comes to their own conclusions. And there was a scene a couple seasons ago, a flashback scene where a lot of disabled women um, were executed, and the audience paid attention and remembered that. And they also know the conversation about unbabies being born and how unbabies, the term for disabled babies, aren't allowed to live. They know those things. Then they see Rose on screen. They learn that she's born into a very privileged position, and then they make the conclusion. Um, the world building is so strong that they don't need to over explain why she's here and what has happened and why this is unusual. The audience comes to that conclusion on its own, which is
yeah,
so interesting. I love reading um, fan ideas and fan
uh,
theories about things because they're so creative and they remember everything. It's amazing. I have to go back and remind myself of things that happened in the show, but they remember everything. It's
I
very
am
cool.
at this point. I mean, I can't believe that I grew up with no in a world with no like YouTube recaps or wiki, or
Yeah,
recaps of anything, because it's so nice now to like, who was that person
same.
3 seasons ago and what was their name? And it's all there. It's wonderful.
Right, right. And it's so helpful as an actor too, because I feel like I'm always behind on TV shows. I'm always behind on TV and film and catching up on things. I have my shows that I love, but I also have a lot of other hobbies and just a lot of other life things, and it can be so easy to get behind. But when you get an audition for something or somebody recommends something, just the access to shows, to not have to, you win and lose some things. We miss that thing of like, oh, the Friends finale was on it Thursday night. And now everybody talks about it the next day. You do miss
Yeah.
that, but just the access of being able to find a show and watch it and within an hour be on the same page of what everybody's talking about. Um, that's very cool. And we forget how new that is. I think we think that streaming has like always been. I
Right.
think we used to get our shows in the mail in the,
Right. Right.
yeah.
Back in my day. Um,
Yeah, right.
in terms of, I know sometimes when you shoot a TV episode, there can be a weird delay before, or you end up seeing it at home with the rest of us. Uh, are
Mhm.
are you on the couch each week right now, uh, trying to find out, who hopefully gets stabbed uh, on this
We were
show?
at the very beginning. Yeah, we're a little bit in the newborn trenches right now. Our little one is 5 weeks old, so we've been a little bit in the survival mode of having to change our schedule every
Gotcha.
day,
Yeah.
and we're both very fortunate. My husband and I are both home right now to handle things together, and he's the coolest little baby. We love him very much. But he's still figuring out how to be a human being, and so we were behind for a while, and then we did a big catch up where we finally we watched everything kind of back to back the last, I think, 4 episodes. And I had gotten scripts for some of them. So, but I didn't get scripts for all of them beforehand during the actual filming. And then sometimes when you receive the scripts for filming, it'd be like 4 or 5 pages just blacked out because it'll be the really, or like they'll change people's names, that kind of thing, like an extra layer of security to keep some of the big spoiler things from getting out. So it's very fun to watch those things and then go, oh, that's what that was. That's what that moment was. Or to see the connective thread between 2 different scenes. Like maybe I got the script for episode 4, but then didn't get 5 or 6, but then I got 7. And so then watching the middle and going, oh, that explains why this
Well,
happened
so and
here.
so's not here.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They give you as much as you need for your character and for your storyline, of course. But it's kind of fun not having access to everything. And then it's very cool, of course, to have a script that you've read, then see how different it is being played out and how brilliant it becomes when these wonderful actors turn it into something
Yeah,
and,
when you
and
got
bring it to life. It's
sets
just the
and
coolest thing.
blocking and costumes,
Yeah.
the show looks so wonderful.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Oh, it's the coolest.
the next thing you have coming out, just going around Film Fest now is Where Do the Adults Go? Is that right? Uh,
Yeah, that's
Indie
a
film?
film that we did a couple years ago. Yeah, the little indie film. It, a little intimate drama, which was very cool to work on because it felt like a play in a lot of ways, and it was all in one set. Um, we are trying to get into the film festivals right now, so it's been on that journey. So I can't say exactly when people will be able to see it, but it's a very special film and kind of a style that you don't really see a lot anymore. It's that verite kind of the fly on the wall, watching everything happen. Um, yeah, it was amazing. So I'm just really excited when it comes out and when I can talk more about it. But we're always getting little updates on that. So it's sometimes these things can take
They really can.
years.
Indie films and film fests
Yeah.
and trying to do right by the release and not shoot yourself in the foot. You can.
Hmm.
I've seen friends have to just like we have to wait. It would be insane
Yeah.
to release it right now. And like, oh, man,
Hmm.
uh, yeah,
Exactly. There's so many things that play into it. The timing of what else is in the festivals and what's popular at a certain time, or the industry has been so back and forth from the pandemic and then the strikes, and now trying to find this new normal and find what do audiences like? Do audiences like these big, expensive IP films as much anymore, the ninth in a series of films, or are they more open to indie films at the same
yeah.
time? And then how to get an indie film made these days? Can you make a film without big names that people will pay attention to, or does everything need that star power? And the conversation around that, every time I talk to my reps, it feels like it changes, and we're still seeing, I think, what the future holds. But I think it's very positive based on some of the films that like at the Oscars this year, and some of the films that are coming into film festivals, uh, and just the conversation about where money needs to go. I feel very optimistic about it. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully that
Well,
movie will be available soon for people to see.
from the audience side, I don't see us not wanting to be entertained anytime soon.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we
Yeah.
all get this industry keeps roaring.
Yeah.
I grew up as that kid that was going to the video store and bringing home 8 at a time. So
Oh, for
uh,
sure,
I
for sure.
was
And
I
you
just
always hear the
love the
stories of like during the Great Depression of people going and maybe they didn't have any money, but they would go to the movie theater and they would watch a movie, and we
yeah. I
always need that.
think one of my favorite lines out of
Yeah.
the show Sense8. They're walking through a village in Africa and tents and huts and very like a hovel poor area of a town. And
Hmm.
reporter asked the guy, okay, that person's sleeping on a pallet on the floor, but they have a big screen TV. Like, what?
Yeah.
Explain to me the logic there. And he's like, well, that's to sleep here, and that's to escape. Like,
Yeah.
there's no other way
Yeah.
to leave. That TV,
Mhm.
and I just loved the like. just kind of a mic drop on the power of like, no, man, sometimes life sucks and you can't fix it, but thank God there's some TV episodes or movies sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And we understand what's going on. Sorry, you definitely hear my cat in the back. One of the crazy ones. We need stories to understand what's going on, and sometimes they reflect what's going on, and sometimes they rebel against what's going on. It's very important. That's just how we operate.
I'm glad Handmaid's Tale Margaret Atwood's fantastic, and I'm so glad Handmaid's Tale got to become
Yes.
part of the wider cultural conversation, and it's got to be
Oh my
really
gosh,
neat to
yes.
be part of it. Thank you
Yes,
so
it's
much
so
for
relevant.
taking a break from a much more important person to
Oh.
to talk to me, and I
Oh, thank you.
hope you and your husband have just some good night's sleep sometime in the next year.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. I listened to the Hacks episode last night, and that's one of the shows that I'm so into right now, and I really appreciated the thoughtful commentary. It just very very nuanced, very wonderful way of diving into something. How you all were able to look at it from an outside point of view and look at maybe some critiques that you would have, but then also dive into the reality of the show and look at it like the characters are real. Talk about it like, well, this is what they've presented us though, and with what they've presented us, this is what this character wants in this moment. I think it's a cool dual way of looking at art, and I appreciate it a lot.
Oh,
so thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I think it's a great podcast.
That.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, have a great rest of your night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You too.
TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener-supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/TVDudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV Dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.